David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another fountain pen review. Today I have for you a confluence of three things which tick a lot of boxes for me. That would be an offering from Galen Leather, who produce a large number of quality writing and stationery adjacent offerings. The pen that I have here is manufactured by Kilk, which has consistently impressed me with their quality writing instruments. This pen is one of their Celestial models. And the third thing is that it's a pen offered in a wide variety of nib choices. But the one I have to show you here today is probably one you haven't heard of before, and that would be called a dentist nib. Why it is called a dentist nib? Well, I will certainly tell you here in a minute. What I'm going to do today is go over the parts and features of this unique offering, talk about what I care for and what I don't care for about it. I'll show you some measurements, size comparisons, and a writing sample, what is one of my favorite specialty nibs I've ever tested out in quite some time. Thanks go out to the good folks at Galen Leather for providing this pen for review. And this is the pen. The Kilk and Galen Leather Special Edition Celestial Tortoise. The trim is an antique brass. Right off the tap, while this resin is called Tortoise, I'm glad that in my opinion it doesn't look too much like tortoiseshell. I'm not a huge fan of tortoiseshell and what it represents. This resin is a deep brown with golden pearlescent swirls and amber hues. I think the swirling brings some life to this resin. It's a really pleasant color palette. Okay, let's take a look at the parts and features of this Turkish offering. The finial is a bit raised and brassed. In traditional Turkish art, geometric patterns often represent heavenly bodies and celestial order. For this celestial offering, these elements are incorporated into the finial and band that we'll get to here in just a second. This pattern is known in Turkish as the charkafilik, or Wheel of Fortune. Below the top, there is a healthy clip band which supports this sturdy clip. I like this design element where the unpolished brass provides a bit of color variation around the edges of the step-ups. It's a nice way to obtain some visual diversity without any added elements, a nice antique look. The cap angles up until about the halfway point where it straightens out, and it's punctuated by this pseudo band of two grooves. The end of the cap angles down slightly, minimizing the step down to the barrel. The barrel begins with this really nice looking wide band. In regard to the celestial theme, this dodecagon is representative of the complex order of the astronomical zodiac. After the band, the barrel then tapers down. Near the conclusion, there is another groove, and then the narrow end is very slightly rounded. The cap twists off with a rotation and a quarter, and underneath we have a number 6 Jowo stainless steel nib. This nib is engraved with a special image. It's Zeynep Parent and her son Can. It's taken from this picture of them together. If you're not familiar, Zeynep was the founder of Galen Leather, and after she succumbed to an extended illness, her husband Yunus and brother Yusuf took over the reins of the company, and has done a really great job in maintaining Zeynep's legacy. I'm sure she would be very proud of what the company has become. It's been maybe 8 or 9 years since Zeynep left us, and that makes me feel a bit old when you see Can at a pen show. He's like 6 feet tall right now. I won't list them all, but there are about 20 different steel and gold nib options for this pen. I mentioned there was something special about this specific nib. It is called the dentist nib. It's Galen Leather's take on the architect grind. Galen Leather's nibmeister was a woman named Meltem Hazaran, and she takes a double broad nib and grinds it into what they describe as a soft architect, which really provides a softer and smoother writing experience with minimal feedback and scratchiness that is thin on the downstrokes and wide on the side strokes. It is called the dentist nib because when she is not grinding nibs for Galen, she is a practicing dentist. And on a side note, she and Yunus are engaged. And I'm very happy for both of them. Okay, getting back to this nib, the section begins with a medium-sized flare before angling up into the threads and a small step up to the remainder of the barrel. This section is a decent length. I don't find my grip to interact with the threads or transition, and if they did, I don't find them to be sharp or uncomfortable. I have found Kilk pens to just have a real solid feeling in the hand. They feel very well built. This pen is plenty long enough to use unposted. The cap does post, and it does post securely. Even though there's a fair amount of brass in this cap, I do find the pen to remain well balanced even when posted. And the cap doesn't backweight the pen. It's as if the large band here acts as a bit of a counterbalance. This is a cartridge converter pen. It accepts standard international cartridges, and a converter is provided. With the internal metal on this section housing, eyedropping this pen would not be advisable. I will put a link to the Galen Leather website in the notes below where this pen is available. The retail price for this pen is $290. I believe the specialty grinds like this dentist nib are an additional $30. And in my opinion, this nib is very much worth that additional expense. And I feel that the pen as a whole is appropriately priced. I have yet to be disappointed by a Kilk offering, and this pen has held true to that experience. Now, when I review pens, I kind of live with them for a while, testing them out over a period of time, and then most of them end up put away with the rest of my collection or returned to the manufacturer or retailer. But for this Kilk Celestial, I can't seem to put this one away. I like the looks, but the main attraction is that dentist nib. It's really a joy to use, and one of my favorite nibs I've tested out in quite some time. So it is well worth you checking out. Okay, now it is time for some measurements, size comparisons, and a writing sample. Here we go with some size comparisons for the Kilk Celestial Tortoise. I wanted to give you another closer look at this material. I just think it really pops, especially in the lights. That it's just kind of a bold gold, and that having the kind of antique brass trim really adds to that look to it. I think it's just a really nice overall package. In regard to some size comparisons, this is what it looks like with the very first Celestial offering that I reviewed. You can see it's slightly larger than that one. And then this one here was the Orient, which is similar in size. So this one's a little bit larger, even though it's the same Celestial model. And then finally, I have one of my other favorite Kilk models. This was the Camera Laterna, and this one was all based on film. I do have a review of this one on my channel, but it's just extraordinary with the film reel here. I have the countdown here around the clip, and I really love that you can just spin the top. That's just a really fun little fidget toy, and it's just so well manufactured. It spins for a lot longer than you think it should, but that is what it looks like in comparison to the new Celestial. In regard to some non-Kilk pens, here it is with a Pilot Vanishing Point. And then here it is with a Leonardo Momento Zero Grande. And then finally here it is with a Visconti Opera Elements. In regard to some uncapped comparisons, here it is with that Momento Zero Grande, and then here it is with the Opera Elements, and then here it is with that smaller Celestial model. Okay, here we go with the writing sample, and sorry, I know this looks a lot worse than it really is, but we have the Kilk Celestial Tortoise. And we will call this a dentist nib. And the ink that I'm using, I thought that it would need an appropriate brown ink for this. And so it's one of the first brown inks I ever got, which is Conway Stewart. And King Sand. This is what the ink looks like. It's just kind of a nice sandy dark brown. This is what it looks like in regard to Chrome Tutankhamun, as well as Diamine Raw Sienna. This is what the 80 milliliter bottles look like for Conway Stewart, that I liked when they actually had the labels on top so you can actually see what ink it is. And the bottles are very similar to that of Diamine. And here we go with the rest of the writing sample. Now, you're not going to get a lot of line variation as far as flexing out of this nib, but what you do receive is when you go on the downstrokes, it is a little bit on the thinner side, and when you go on the side strokes, then it is more. So when you are writing, that it just adds that additional flair to here. In regard to the ink flow, I'd say it's very generous on here. In regard to reverse writing, that actually performed very nicely, but better than I thought that it would. Sometimes specialty nibs aren't necessarily meant for that type of thing. And then in regard to some fast writing, it's just really pleasant to use. It has some really nice feedback to it, and it is a very soft nib to write with, so it is extremely pleasant. So there we have the Galen Leather Kilk Celestial Tortoise. I'll put a link in the notes below where you can check this out on the Galen site. It's a pen I recommend, but it's even more, it's a nib that I strongly recommend and one that I've had a lot of fun with. So until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.